There were a few different video ideas I was kicking around and working on before I settled on the video I'm making right now, and I'm going to go over those at the end of the video just because they're kind of fun and worth mentioning, and I got a bunch of footage that I don't really want to go to waste, but like I said, we'll save that for the end of the video. So if you want to peace out after I'm done talking about the game series I'm focusing on in this video, that's fine. Thanks for at least sticking around to watch the main attraction, but you're going to miss out on some fun things like a version of Rock, Scissors, Paper, officially licensed by Sega for the Saturn, that's essentially like strip poker and is pretty creepy, and my attempt at repairing a Game Gear, which, spoiler alert, I fail at doing. That being said, here is what we're going to actually go through with today. It's the Kururin series of games on some Nintendo consoles you may have heard of. Anyway, this is probably a series you are not familiar with at all, if I had to guess, unless you live in Europe, but you know, probably still not. This series follows a bird named Kururin, so that's where the name comes from, that can fly, but for some reason pilots a helicopter because his family or the family of those close to him keeps getting kidnapped or lost, which sucks ass for them, and it's apparently only up to Kururin to get them back. Not the police or the FBI, just this one little bird with a helicopter just because. Alright, so there's 3 games in this series, 2 on the Game Boy Advance and 1 on the GameCube. I'll be taking a look at each one. The first 2 on the GBA aren't so incredibly different from each other, so I'll be spending the most time on the first release just because it lays most of the groundwork for both games, but the GameCube version is the most distinct, so I'll be spending some time on that one getting you caught up with how it differs from the GBA titles. I will say the GameCube version is not my favorite of the group, which you would assume it would be since it's on a big boy console and all that, but nope. And I'll go into why later. However, I will come right out and say at the very start here, as I usually do in my videos, so spoiler alert, all 3 of these games are great and worth playing. There, I didn't make you wait until the end for my opinion here, aren't you happy? I actually loved all 3 of these games, and it sucks we never got a single one in North America, but play these, they're a really good time. Now, all the games I'm about to talk about here, they were all developed by a company called Aiding, and they were published by a company called Nintendo. I'm sure you've heard of them. And these are all Japanese exclusives except for the very first game, which I'm going to be talking about here first in a second. But that's Kururin. And yeah, that one got a European release, but never in North America. But it did get an English translation. Cool, I guess. And then the other 2 games, Kururin Paradise and then Kururin Squash. God, it's hard to keep these names in order, but yeah, those are both Japan exclusives, but there are English patches available online for both of those games. These games are entirely playable without English, just it would be nice to have it for the GameCube version, so do that. That being said though, let's take a look at the very first game in the series, again, Kururin on the Game Boy Advance. The rules and controls for this game are incredibly simple, and the easiest way to describe it, it's like playing a digital version of the classic board game Operation, kinda.
People at home, did you have Operation?
It's a stretch, but hear me out. You complete every stage by making it through the course, all while trying not to touch anything with your helicopter, which rotates either clockwise or counterclockwise at a constant rate, which is definitely as hot as it sounds. I don't get that joke. There's a normal mode and a hard mode, and the only difference is that your ship is smaller in normal mode, which makes it easier to navigate through the courses, and hard mode is when I'm ready to This will become a staple of the series. I prefer to play the game on normal mode because I'm not dumb, but if you like being frustrated by games and making them so hard you never finish them like my pal Dan, then hard mode is for you. The controls are very basic in this first game. You can press A or B to speed up the movement of your ship, which is critical in certain sections to avoid some moving obstacles without taking damage. The L and R buttons are not used here in any meaningful way, though pressing R will sound a horn for no reason.
Listen to that horn! Oh my god! Oh, she's beautiful!
And pressing L will switch you through your earned skins for your little helicopter. Nothing really groundbreaking here, and the controls will be refined as later entries in the series are released. There are obstacles through each level which you will need to avoid, such as cannonballs or moving platforms, but mostly the biggest enemy here is the course itself, as touching any part of it, such as the walls, will steal 1 heart from you. If you get hit 3 times, your ship will explode and you get to start the stage from the beginning. In every single stage, there are heart refill stations you can make your way through, which serve as checkpoints, and any damage you have taken up to that point will be forgiven, and many times these can be a godsend, and there will be multiple heart refill stations in some of the longer levels. Given the design of each course, your helicopter rotating either clockwise or counterclockwise is the key to success in many sections, and there are springs set up along the path which, colliding into these, will change the orientation of your ship. Even though it's never mentioned in the game, there are also designs in many levels that are meant to give you a good idea of what you should be doing in certain stages. For example, there might be a big round dot randomly placed somewhere in a stage. This is to indicate to the player that if you park the center of your copter with the center of this dot, that you'll be safe from damage while you figure out how to proceed in the course. There are also lines drawn down the center of many paths. This is to guide you to where you need to go next, and again, if you keep your center in line with these marks, you'll be safe from most damage. The game never tells you this, it's the details you pick up on the more you play the game. Now, there's plenty of strategy here, and the game does allow for you to pause each stage and look through the entire map in order to get an idea of what you'll be going up against in the upcoming sections. It's pretty crucial to do this so you can plan ahead for what's coming up and to figure out which way your ship will need to be rotating. It also helps to know if there's a heart recharge station coming up so you know exactly how many risks you can take before you explode. There's a ton of strategy packed into this adorable ass game, and it doesn't look it at first glance, but the further in you get, this game turns into a proper puzzler because there are so many maneuvers and things you'll need to be taking into consideration to make it to the end goal in the later stages. This game is somewhat vague on your actual objective, and while the bird at the beginning does ask you to retrieve her family, you don't necessarily have to do that. You can more or less complete the entire game without collecting a single member of her family along the way. However, if you want to officially beat the game, you'll need to be collecting these lost birds in the stages that they are hidden in. I had gone through originally with the intention of just completing each stage, when in reality what I should have been doing to get an actual ending is pick up each of these funny fellows along the journey. They aren't in every stage, but you can find them by searching around each stage from the pause menu. The game also keeps track of each stage time, although from what I can tell, this is if you only want to beat a time you previously had. There's nothing else to it aside from that. From what I understand, if you clear each stage and get a perfect score, not taking any damage, you unlock 3 more courses. However, I was unable to do that, and I just learned of this now, so if you love grinding, this is probably your goal. There's a good assortment of stages here. There's multiple larger areas that consist of 5 or 6 stages each, and each has their own unique theme. Think of it like the different cups in Mario Kart, if that makes sense. It's not exactly the same, but it's close enough to give you an idea. Speaking of that, let's talk about the graphics and sound on this one. They are super cute and elegant in their simplicity, exactly what you'd expect from a game published by Nintendo. The game is colorful, the character sprites are all cute, and you can tell just by looking at my footage here that this game has a unique style that never got old to me. Each stage has a lot of fun things going on and some great design choices, and everything just pops off the GBA screen, which I'm sure was the intention, as this was probably made with the non-backlit screen in mind. On my backlit screen though, this game looks amazing, and so does the sequel. It also looks good on my Gameboy Advance player on my GameCube, which is how I captured the footage for both of the GBA games. But yeah, come on, look at this. You know you'd think this game looks great, admit it. All that being said, though, you got a decently long game here. I'm not exactly sure how long it took me to complete it because the game doesn't keep track of overall playtime, but I know it did take me about 3 days playing for hours a night to completely finish the game. Alright, let's get into the sequel now and see how it differs from this one. Just from the opening cutscene, you can see that the graphical presentation of Kururin Paradise has really stepped up. Everything looks better here. The backgrounds, the stage design, the character designs, every single part of this game has taken what the first game laid down and improved upon it. That also includes the music. This game is also only available in Japanese, so if you want this in English, you need a fan translation, which exists, and I recommend just for the little amount of dialogue in the game. The story here is similar to the first, except this time your own family has been kidnapped. Oh no! And for some reason it's up to you to get them back instead of the police again, which I guess they don't exist in this reality. Instead of collecting other birds like you did in the last game, you collect keys here, and you'll know if there's a key in any given stage because a question mark will pop up over Kururin's head, which is helpful in finding these things, and also the game never tells you any of this because I missed all of this in my initial playthrough. I'll talk about that soon, but collecting these here is actually incredibly beneficial if you want to extend the length of the game because there are a shitload of extra levels to unlock with these keys. This sequel introduces a few things, some crucial improvements and some not so much. First and foremost, holding L or R now will actually increase your helicopter rotation speed, which is a godsend. Pair that with holding A or B to increase your vehicle speed, like in the last game, and now you can speed run the hell out of these stages if you know what you're doing, and this makes all the difference. I played this game before I played the original that I talked about earlier. I didn't know that that one existed when I got this one, and going to that one from this without the speed up rotation kind of hindered my enjoyment of that one, so make sure you play these in order. Paradise also introduces mini-games which I suppose serve as boss battles since you are going up against what appear to be bosses talking mad shit. And when you complete them, you get a family member back and it unlocks magic tricks, which are basically mini-games and other dumb things you can view from the main menu. I never really cared about any of this, but you might. I also never really cared for these mini-game stages as much as I did the main stages since I found many of them to just be frustrating and annoying, although I suppose some were okay, but for the most part the real meat and potatoes here, which is an expression I don't think I really truly understand, is the main gameplay of squeezing through each course using your helicopter. I'm sure some people will appreciate these mini-games, but for the most part I found them to be more frustrating than anything else. It's nice they tried to include some variety here, but damn dog, just stick to what works. The base game is fun as hell, and there's no reason to ever pull away from that. This is a minor complaint though, and one I'm gonna move on from now. There's a ton of bonus stages in this game. If you find all the hidden keys, like I said, and if you complete all of the courses that they unlock, you unlock one extra hard stage to get the official ending to the game. I initially thought I beat the game without ever finding a single key because I didn't know it was a thing I was supposed to do. And I was pretty happy to learn later on that these existed and unlocked more stages, and it basically doubled the length of the game. I was pleased with that, and I went back and collected every key. These games can be pretty cryptic sometimes, as I said. They sort of throw you into it and don't tell you what you need to be doing, and that's why I'm here. There is a chance, though, that it might have been something that was lost in the fan translations, though I'm not sure since the fan translation here seems pretty goddamn good, but that's just my guess. It could be way off for all I know. I'm just saying it seems legit. Anyway, I was absolutely shocked that I was able to complete this final bonus stage on my GBA player to get footage of it, since for some reason my 8-bit do, however you pronounce that, Super Nintendo controller just did not feel right for this game, despite that controller being amazing, especially for GBA games on the GBA player. It just felt off playing these specific games outside of an actual handheld Game Boy Advance, which I think they were fine-tuned to work with, but damn girl, I got it done, as evidenced by this ending footage right here. And you know what? Spoiler alert, but your family wasn't kidnapped. Your dad just set all of this up to surprise you for your birthday and teach you magic tricks, I guess. Holy smokes! Now, if I were Kururin, I would be super pissed because about how many times I crashed a helicopter and almost died trying to get these family members back that were all just in on some prank. What an asshole, dude. Like, seriously, Kururin's dad sucks. Anyway, this and This and Kururin are very similar. This just takes the foundation that one laid down and built upon it like a motherfucker. And if you're already going to play one of the GBA games, which you should play them both, but if you're only going to get one, get this one. It's far superior and my favorite of all the games. Finally, let's talk about the last game released in the series and the only one to be released on an actual console that isn't a handheld. I'm talking about Kururin Squash, baby, and while the game may appear to be a vast improvement over the previous game strictly based on looks, in the gameplay department, I think it falters a bit. It has improvements throughout, and I'll get to that, but in the upgrade to the 3D and to polygons instead of sprites, I feel like the game lost a little magic and actually became a little bit more difficult on accident just because it can be harder to decipher how close you actually are to hitting a wall due to the 3D depths of the walls. I don't know, just watch the clips, maybe you'll see what I'm referring to, but it may be difficult to convey these nitpicks without you actually playing a game like this. That's my assessment. Regardless, let's get into this one. I'll say up front though that this is not a bad game, though it has frustrated me more than either of the last two games combined, and a lot of that has to do with the power-ups and the boss stages, but again, I'll get into that later. Okay, so where should I start with this one? Let's start with the graphics and presentation. And again, I should just say this game only came out in Japan, so what you're looking at here is a fan translation. And again, I think they did a great job, but I honestly couldn't tell you if they didn't, because I can't read Japanese. But everything seems to be in order here, and out of the two games only in Japanese, I strongly suggest that you get the English patch for this one if you can, since the in-game store where you can buy upgrades have lengthy descriptions on what each item does, and it's nice to have that in English instead of Japanese. And no, the store does not have you buy items with real money like today's bullshit, but with in-game currency you earn through progression. Also, there's some text during a few stages describing how power-ups work, and it's useful to know, but even without an English patch, I feel like you could probably figure it out. This isn't a Final Fantasy game or something. It's a game where you pilot a helicopter around and try not to touch edges. I think you'll be fine if it comes down to it, but having English is preferable to not having it. What's changed here is that one of your goals is now to collect coins, and you want those coins so that you can buy items from the aforementioned shop. These items help you cheat your ass off in case you're struggling to get through a stage, and you can purchase items like additional hearts for a specific stage that's giving you trouble, essentially meaning you can take more hits than usual, and there's also a ton of cosmetic upgrades you can make to your helicopter. Going back to the coins though, adding these to the game creates an interesting new way to play. You can also buy maps for specific stages in this game. Not exactly an upgrade in my opinion, where in the previous games you could just look at the entire level as you saw fit. In this game you need to purchase the right to do so, which is lame, but fair. The maps are cheap enough. In the previous titles, there were multiple paths and many stages to take, but none were really more risky to take than others. They just existed as multiple means to a single end, unless you were looking for a key in Paradise or a bird in Kuru. But those were like 1 in 5 stages, so not very common. In Squash, however, there are multiple paths and many stages, but many of them make it pretty clear that there's a huge risk-reward factor into the choice you make. You might see one path with many small coins leading the way on a big path, or a very small curvy path with multiple huge coins that are worth more when you collect them. This makes it obvious that taking one path will be a cakewalk and you will probably suffer minimal damage if any, but the path with big coins, without spelling it out for you but making it clear, this path will have huge rewards coin-wise, but if you suck ass at the game, you're probably going to die trying to finish the course this way. And of course, the game even lets you take every multiple path and clean the stage of every coin if you think you're good enough to do so, which is what I attempted to do on every stage I played. However, I never finished this game, but I assume I'm about halfway through it. Blasphemy, I know, but look, I haven't put a video on in a while. I gotta get this out since every other video I tried to make before this one failed. Again, I'll talk about that at the end of this video. Moving on. What stayed the same here are the controls. Now you can speed up your ship and the speed of your rotation, so you can speed run through these levels if you know what you're doing, and that's pretty much what I always try to do because it's the most fun for me. I do feel like the analog stick on the GameCube controller doesn't feel as precise for a game like this as the D-pad did on the GBA, but it gets the job done just fine since that analog stick is pretty goddamn great on that controller. If it was any other controller, who knows if this game would even be acceptable. There's also the heart refill areas, which exist in all three games. In fact, everything gameplay-wise is pretty much the same here. The only addition is the shop and new power-up mechanics and bosses, and that's what I want to talk about right now because it sort of makes and breaks this game depending on whether you're into it or not. Now, as you progress through the stages, in fact, once in each zone, which consists of smaller stages just like the GBA games, you will be granted an upgrade that changes the way this game is played. For example, the first zone you will gain a punch ability, which now you can kill enemies on the stage by punching them. On the second stage, you gain the ability to dive below the surface of water to collect coins and avoid obstacles either under the water or above it. And just like a Metroid game, you will fight an end boss at the end of this zone, and you will most definitely be using the ability you learned here to defeat the boss. Now, I'm on the fence as to whether or not the boss fights here and weird upgrades in a game like this are even needed. However, if you only played this game out of the series, it might seem just fine to you. But some upgrades are far more useful than others. Diving underwater and resurfacing to avoid obstacles feels like a natural progression of the gameplay, and I've got no complaints. However, the ability to punch just so the developers can throw in enemies that are easy to punch and kill seems stupid. However, the boss fights with this ability are really fun, so maybe they should have just kept that ability locked to the boss stage. Then there are the abilities that are just total trash and almost ruin the game for me. The tornado throw ability is stupid as hell and basically replaces the punch ability to kill enemies but makes it somehow more stupid. And the flamethrower ability opens the door to the absolute worst stages seen in a Kururin game. I hated these stages so much. I did not appreciate being alive the entire time I had to use the flamethrower, as those stages put you on rails and you had to dodge and flame enemies and obstacles with the worst controls I've ever felt in a video game. It was the most tedious bullshit of all time, and if not that, at least in this entire series. Before this game, when you died in the previous entries, you at least knew it was because you sucked and you needed to learn the stages. In Squash, however, many times I died, I felt like it was the game's fault, and it probably was. And it's not just the power-ups. Like I said before too, the 3D depth of the walls that will kill you can throw you off sometimes. There's so many times I felt like I could clear something, and I ended up digging the wall, and I seriously thought I could squeeze through. Maybe that's my fault, but in the previous games, the borders are drawn hard. You know exactly where the line is that you can and cannot touch, and when you touch them, you're like, yeah, I did that, oops. But in this game, it's a little more vague, and there's a lot of times I'm like, what the hell, I didn't even touch that. And that's just not acceptable for a title like this. In a game where precision is emphasized, there can be no gray areas. The player needs to know exactly what they can and cannot do, and this game doesn't quite convey that the way it should. It's a shame too, because this game could be great, but some decisions made by the devs to modernize this one for the big boy consoles kinda ruined the experience, and they would have been better served by still following the GBA formula more closely. Probably just going with sprites and not polygons, but who am I to say? I still recommend it, as I recommend every entry in this series, but ultimately I feel like this is the weakest entry simply because they tried too hard to make this one more complex than it needed to be. And you know, really, it's a shame they didn't keep this series going. It could have been amazing on the DS or the 3DS, although they probably would have implemented some touchscreen bullshit that would have also ruined it, or the Wii or the Wii U. There's a lot of potential for all of these consoles, and it's too bad Nintendo let this one slip by the wayside, because I had a great time playing these games, and it would have been great if this one would have become a Nintendo staple. Thank you guys for watching this one. It took quite a lot of work to finally get a video out, as everything else was a giant pile of fail that I tried. But seriously, if you get a chance to check these games out, you should. They are pretty simple in their execution, but these games are insanely fun. If that's all you came for, you can check out now. But if you want to see what my other two videos were that I tried to make before this one, feel free to stick around. I'll roll the end credits for a minute or so, and then stay tuned for the after credits scenes if you're interested. And the only reason I'm doing it like this is because I know some of the people that are here for this content will definitely not want to be here for the content I'm going to show next. So I'll try to keep it as separate as possible. But thank you guys for watching, and if you stick around, I'll see you then. welcome back. Like I said earlier in this review, I was kicking around a couple video ideas and began work on all of them in one way or another. This was one of them, the one that we just finished now, and each were at different stages of completion. Now, I've got notes on these videos, but I'll also just be ad-libbing most of this. The first one I started consists of a rock, scissors, paper game straight from Japan on the Sega Saturn. Probably showing the videos on the screen now. And basically, this is where the loser of a game of rock, scissors, paper strips off their clothes. And Sega officially licensed this back in the 90s. And I think it was the only adults-only game rating, the AO rating or whatever game that they did license. And I think that after they did this, they decided they don't want to do this anymore. But yeah, man. Dude, I tried to make this one work because I thought it would be hilarious. I know Thomas Jenkins knows this because I remember hyping it up to him. Goddamn, I keep burping. But I know when I found out it existed, I downloaded it right away and put it on my Sega Saturn. Or whatever, on the hard drive in my Saturn. And I was super excited to play this one. And yeah, and I remember telling him about it. And God, this was probably like months ago. But anyway, all I know is like, okay, look, so here's what it says here, but this is true. So I tried playing this game for a couple weekends, and I put hours and hours into this. And it was just way harder to get like actual good footage. But also at the same time, the more I played it, the more it felt. I don't know, it just felt very exploitive. And I'm not sure how much I ended up liking it. It was funny, though, for a while, like playing it at first. It was like, hell yeah, this is hilarious. Rock, scissors, paper, and the loser takes off their clothes. Like, cool. But yeah, the more I played it, the more it just became very clear that it sucked. And it wasn't a game of chance. It was rigged. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's fun to check out as a novelty, but ultimately, like, you should just probably avoid this one, especially we live in a world where porn is easily accessible. You don't need to subjugate yourself to this garbage. Like, you can just find porn. So, skip this game. It's actually not fun. It's really crappy. Apparently, there's a PlayStation version of this, but I don't even know if that's confirmed. And that... From what I've read, if it does exist, it's a bootleg. So it was never approved by Sony, as this version was actually approved by Sega. And let's see, what was I going to talk about? Yeah, and then I was going to talk about the Game Gear. And just check out my notes here. I received a Game Gear, yeah, from my boy toy Thomas Jenkins. That's what I actually wrote. I got a Game Gear from my boy toy Thomas Jenkins to see if I could make it work. And spoiler alert, I could not. Now, I replaced the capacitors on it and cleaned out all of the corrosion from the batteries, and I probably have video of this up. Maybe I don't, but these batteries like straight up exploded inside of it. And I texted Jenkins and told him that, as much as I appreciate his hospitality and undying faith in me, that perhaps he should stop sending me stuff to fix because I suck at it. Yeah, dude, that's true. And so far, he sent me a PlayStation 3, a Game Boy Advance, and this Game Gear, and I haven't been able to repair any of them. So ultimately, like, what I can do is I can mod consoles that are already working and follow directions to mod them. Like, I'm great at that, but I have a very, very hard time fixing consoles that are broken. And it's actually hilarious because right now I'm looking at an Xbox One. No, I'm sorry, an Xbox Series X. It's hard for me to keep these in, like, I don't have any of these. I don't have Xbox. I PC game for that shit, but my friend Dan, who I mentioned earlier in this video, because he just likes to play games on hard and then quits playing them because they're too hard. Anyway, he gave me this. It's like his brother-in-law's Xbox or whatever, and he wanted me to fix this. Apparently, it's just an HDMI issue. And if it's that simple, like, yeah, I might be able to fix that. But Jesus Christ. Getting back to the Game Gear, though, yeah, I did everything I could with this one, and I it up at the very end, and I don't think that has anything to do with it not working. However, I did knock off oh god, what was it? Was it a resistor? Yeah, I believe it was a resistor. I knocked off a resistor and I bought a replacement, and I was able to get that put back on no problem. And I was able to get like a picture for a little bit But I don't know, something wasn't working right. I messed up this Game Gear, and it's too hard to say what it could have been. I'm just not good at this kind of stuff. Like I said, like I'm not an expert when it comes to understanding how the technology works. I'm an expert of like if someone tells me that this is how it works and these are the steps to follow in order to get from point A to point B, I can do that. But just troubleshooting, as you might have seen if you saw my PlayStation repair or mod video, I ran into a problem there and I got really lucky with that one because I was having a problem with like no video. And some chick, Rainbow Repair, put up a video like on what to do if you run into that, and she just happened to nail my problem. So, yeah. Otherwise, I'm not good at figuring out why something is broken, but I can do something with it if it's already working. Does that make sense? Anyway, I just keep on talking because I wanted to give more of an excuse to show more videos of me working on this thing because, damn, that was one hell of a operation too. It was a couple weeks of just setting up the recording equipment and all of this stuff and trying to get the best recording I could of me working on this Game Gear, and God, it just didn't work at the end of the day, man, and it's a real bummer, but that's the way things like that go. And you know what, though? I will say, and here's my last paragraph here, and I might just read this word for word because it is worth giving Thomas proper credit for the things that he actually sent me here. It wasn't a total loss. Thomas sent me all this awesome shit, including an old cell phone to play Snake on, which is super awesome of him to even think of that. And he sent me batteries for that too. He's just like, so I can turn this phone on and play Snake, which is awesome. Like, what a kick-ass guy. He sent me a ton of stickers. I put them all over my work table. He sent me an Activision controller with a bunch of games on it. And he sent me like a Pac-Man raincoat, which is awesome. And I was just like, where do you get this crazy shit? Like, for real. And it's like, I don't know. I got a lot of just modern mainstream stuff. And then he's just got stuff like Pac-Man raincoats. And it's like, yeah, it's just something I would never think of having. Like, I've got a Sonic the Hedgehog doll on one of my speakers, but like, yeah, he's got a Pac-Man raincoat. That's awesome. And I will wear that at some point, man. Trust me, bro, I will. I know you're watching this. You're a stand-up guy, and I'm lucky you're a fan of this channel, dude. And again, man, I'm sorry I failed at fixing every single thing you've ever sent my way, but I appreciate you all the same, man. And I'm sure that in the future, even though I'll probably tell you not to, you will send me more shit. And I'm just going to say right now, please don't, because I can't fix it. But I know you're going to anyway, and thanks for existing, man. And I'm glad you've been around since the start of this channel. You're a kick-ass guy. And for the rest of you that are still here, I hope that this was fun for you. Have a wonderful night, and thanks for sticking around and just watching this garbage here. We'll see you guys on the next video.